What it do, anime crew? Amen. Listen, today I'm going to be ranting about Call of the Night Season 2 because I just finished it. I've heard some mixed things about this one. It has a little bit of a different tone from Season 1. Some people think it's better, some people think it's worse. I think it's similar. If you haven't seen my original Call of the Night rant, me saying it's similar is very high praise, actually. This season is a lot more plot-driven, just a ton of backstory, just like so much expo. Not that it's like expo dumping in the bland sense where there's not a lot like happening on screen, except, characters just like talking about stuff. But more so, we're just going into the backstories of a bunch of these characters, particularly Anko, who was the highlight of the second half of Season 1. And she's the highlight here too. But it's interesting because it was an antagonist that had so much of what the kids call aura. And boy, did she lose it. Boy, did she lose it here. Because she turned from like this extremely badass, calculating, larger-than-life, universally focused assassin of vampires with all these mysterious motives to just some depressed girl who needs her backpack checked before she comes into school, like that is the exact the type of psychology they went for. Was definitely a school shooter type beat. It's one of those things where she had like a doomed Yuri. There's a lot of doomed Yuri in this season, honestly. Like everybody wanted to get with Nazuna, and they were all women, and Nazuna kind of was just like, nope. There's a really weird, well, I guess the first one was Haru, but there's a really, really weird thing where Nazuna is the exact spitting image of her mother because of the way that they conceived a half vampire, half human child. And the mother character is someone who was in love, like Nazuna's mother figure is someone who was in love with Nazuna's actual mother who died, who looks identical to her. So she has this like weird doting motherly personality, but at the same time, she like kind of has the hots for her. It's really weird. It's a really, really weird, uncomfortable dynamic that was touched on in the first half of the season, like episodes like second half of episode 3 up to episode 6 or so. They focused a lot on that dynamic with some really interesting directing. I mean, I think they literally used nails on a chalkboard for the sound effects there. Like, not even kidding. Like, it was just so unpleasant and awkward and complicated and stilted, kind of trying to replicate that the emotions of that dynamic between her name was Honda? I think her name was Honda and Nazuna, which is like ultimately healed by the end of the season, I would say, for the most part. And then after that is like the Halloween arc where, of course, this absolutely jaw-dropping, beautiful show has to do a bunch of horrible CGI crowd shots that look absolutely terrible. I won't dwell on that too much, but it looks terrible. And you have the big Anko arc where she's unveiling her great plan, but as it's going on, you're kind of just like, wow. She's kind of just helpless here. Like, she's kind of just screwed. And then it turns out she wasn't even really trying to succeed. She's just crazy. Her plan was absolutely stupid. It would have never worked in a million years for a number of reasons. And she was just essentially doing an elaborate suicide attempt under the guise of martyrdom, I guess. It's something where she had all of this passive or even active ideation, but in order to keep herself going, she needed to motivate herself by having some sort of group to hate to explain it all. And that's definitely a little bit of a character trait you could pick up from her as a frustration with not being able to explain it all, because she talks about her family troubles that are a root of a lot of her problems, and she puts it into perspective by talking about how it's really not that bad. Like, every family has family troubles. I don't know why I'm so unbelievably, emotionally sensitive and depressed over this. This is, of course, before they die. And so that I felt like that was kind of an important part of her character, is that she just kind of feels wrong, Like, she's not somebody who gets along with anyone. She's really smart. She's smarter than almost everyone else at her school, which leads to her just kind of being a loner and being able to very effectively put up walls to shut people out because she's, afraid of emotional vulnerability and friendship and all that shit. But it's a weird thing. Her character is really weird, honestly, because she's also like asexual or something. Like she mentions like right away, like very upfront, she's like, I have no attraction to men. And then she tries to fall in love with Nazuna, but is not able to. So it's kind of implied that she can't do either, Which is eventually contrasted by Ko, who appears to be making significant progress in falling for Nazuna. And also Nazuna has been developing in terms of her emotional maturity and wanting to spend alone time with Ko and not being so easy to sort of like goad on and manipulate through poking at her ego and stuff like that. So they're both developing each other, which is a very important part of a good romance story. They're both rubbing off on each other in mostly positive ways, which is really neat. I must say this season is a big step up in terms of the comedy. A lot of people say that the tone and the atmosphere isn't as great because there's not as many episodes focused on like the desolate nightlife. I see where they're coming from. I think that might be the tone that Itamura and the boys did best. But at the end of the day, they're just exploring different settings in this one. We're going back in time. We're doing more of that sort of like coffee tinted detective pseudo noir aesthetic when it comes to scenes regarding Anko. And then you had that abandoned hospital aesthetic thing going on. A lot more of like washed out stuff, and I really appreciated it. I just wish they embraced like a live action scene on like real Halloween or something instead of that stupid CGI crowd shot. That it wasn't just one shot is the problem. It was like a recurring thing throughout like the most dramatic episodes in the show. But yeah, ultimately Anko kind of gets Talk no Jutsu'd out of being a villain and is ultimately made sympathetic, which is weird because like what made her good was that she was such a force of nature, just like single-mindedly focused on the eradication of all vampires. And it's kind of interesting to see. It was like, yeah, that was basically just like a cover-up, for the fact that she had no sense of community at all. She just had to like look for some sort of a group to hate, and then felt so helpless and insignificant that she wanted her presence to be known, like her impact on the world to feel known, and she wanted to have like a sort of martyrdom where she didn't really actually care to live anymore. There wasn't anything that she enjoyed, but she wanted everybody else to somehow feel her pain to make it okay. You know what I mean? Because she has no one to vent to, because she's so closed off, and she reads all these like detective novels about finding weaknesses and discovering what makes people tick, and she's just, I don't know, it's just she's just all about hurting people, and it's just the classic hurt people story. It's pretty good. Nothing crazy. I wasn't like overly impressed by it, but it was still pretty neat, pretty dope. After that, the messaging sort of geared more towards taking the step, being okay to fail, putting yourself out there, the call of the night, rejecting normalcy, embracing being a weirdo, all that sort of stuff that I touched on in my season 1 video. In terms of the directing, they still have those non-diegetic color shifts. They're doing a lot more with the lighting here. Interesting stuff with the pacing. We got the wandering eyes. We got a lot of warping shots, fisheye shots, bird's eye shots, bird's eye fisheye shots. There's definitely a lot of cool stuff going out here. Very occasional breaks into CG that don't look terrible. POV shots in most cases, which I actually really enjoyed. Unfortunately, that CGI crowd scene. But, we still have a lot of those directorial trademarks with the visual shorthand for the eyes wandering off and the extremely striking backgrounds that frame the characters in a way that represents the dynamic of their conversation. You kind of just have everything you'd want. A lot of the characters from season 1 that are more humans are kind of left out here, to be honest. They don't have any presence in this season whatsoever, except in the first 2 episodes with the little blonde boy and his vampire girlfriend. It's definitely just like a season about vampires, and it's interesting because they definitely threw out the mysterious vibes in favor of a much goofier tone, but I think the tone was actually effective, and there's still like a sense of majesty to the night. But it's like, yeah, ultimately Anko's plan was, despite it being a thinly veiled, elaborate suicide attempt from a girl who wanted nothing more than to, spread hate and let her presence be known, which is, in fairness, is fairly realistic psychology. But it was just so unbelievably stupid of a plan for such a smart character that it was kind of bizarre. Not that I ended up hating it or anything, but I was just kind of like, I'm mixed on this. But other than that, just like the fact that they'd be flying through the air with such impunity, they're just like, oh, we're just going to go fly around town. We're just going to go super speed in the streets. And crash into a wall and cause a bunch of property damage because no one's gonna notice. It's nighttime. There's only like one guy awake in the entirety of Japan because it's nighttime, and everybody who is awake is drunk. It's like, alright, bro. People can like look out their window. There's, it's really silly, honestly. And that's just sort of the tone that I think Call of the Night has started to embrace. Some of my favorite scenes were the ones where Nazuna shuts Ko up by just kissing him, but unlike what they'll do in a lot of shows where like that's this big dramatic moment, it's like actually diegetic. Like they're just like arguing, and then there's like a half-second kiss, and then it just goes to the next scene, which is really good comedic timing. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was pretty funny. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to touch on. Oh, another thing that was really funny was the otaku character, the lovable otaku, and his like averting eyes thing, and his little arc with writing the dojin, and his girlfriend who everyone was like who was embarrassed that everyone would fall in love with him, and he keeps himself fat on purpose even though it doesn't even taste good because that's what his idol Midori wants. Very, very interesting. I still just love these character designs, man. These sleepy eyes, these slick kind of gaudy outfits. The teacher girl, S tier. The femboy, S tier. Nazuna, God tier. And even Ko's got some drip here and there with his vampire form. But yeah, this is ultimately a step in a less serious direction, which I see as sort of a neutral move more than anything. I think I would say I maybe slightly preferred season 1 and the Desolate vibes, but overall I wouldn't really call this particularly a step down. That's more just kind of circumstantial to which one happened to have more episodes that fell in line with my personal taste. I feel like they're actually of a very similar quality, and there are aspects in which the story has actually improved, namely the comedy and the extended cast of like the vampires, the ensemble, and stuff like that. Hopefully, moving forward, they'll start to integrate back some of the old characters. I mean, that's very presumptuous considering that we might not get a season 3. The last episode of this season was called Call of the Night, which is definitely a very punctual statement. I'm not going to say that it's in any ways like deconfirmed because of that, but I would say the chances do look a little bit rough. They do look a little bit rough because, I mean, this show wasn't like supremely popular. It was very popular, but it's like 2 seasons for an anime is already pretty lucky, so I don't know if we're going to get a third, but if we do, I hope they start to integrate the ensemble cast more focused on in the first season back into it. We can get more of like a web of characters. And then, I hope things progress with Anko and Nazuna pretty smoothly. And yeah, I think it's moving in an interesting direction. I really just hope we get a season 3, honestly. I really like this show. I give the first season an 8. I probably give this season like a strong 7. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. What did you guys think about it? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys soon. Whoa, I don't know why I said see you. That was creepy as hell. I'll see you guys in the next one.